Welcome to the A Wave Away podcast. Life comes to us in waves. Our emotions, sensations, and thoughts come and go. The next one is always just a wave away. I'm Waverly Davis, your host of the A Wave Away podcast. Join me on the journey of flowing with the waves of life. We dive deep into all things womanhood, motherhood, somatic and spiritual healing, and much, much more. Welcome, love. I'm so glad you're here. Hello, beautiful listeners. I am attempting to record this intro while my kids are home playing outside in the yard, which I typically don't do. I'm typically doing podcasting work while they're at school. So we'll see if we can get through this without the chaos of kiddo land. Fingers crossed. I'm so excited to share this episode with you today, but before I introduce our beautiful guest, I want to just give a little pod update. I am planning to take a break from the podcast at mid-December point. I will have made about 34 episodes at that point in like 9 months, so break time is calling. I have 4 more amazing episodes to release, including the one today. So all 4 of these will be released by mid-December. And then I'm going to take a bit of a break, maybe a month, maybe 2, maybe even 3. Really taking a break, of course, to rest. And also to focus on my sound baths, to focus on some women's gatherings and retreats I'm doing in the new year. And also to focus on some writing I'm doing. I've talked a little bit about it here on the podcast. It's all about mothering, being a mother, being a daughter. It's coming into form in a series of short essays, but it's still very new, so we'll see. But I want to dedicate more time to this writing during my break. So that's what I'll be up to. But don't fret, there are still 4 more episodes coming. And then after the break, I'll be back with a whole new incredible group of guests that I'm so excited to share. Let's get into today's episode. I am so excited to share this just beautifully nourishing and wise conversation with Rima Staines. If you don't know Rima, she is an artist whose work straddles myth, magical realism, and the folk arts. She works predominantly as a painter, but also with music, writing, drawing, printmaking, sculpture, theater, puppetry, animation, and book arts. In 2018, she was a finalist in the Best Artist category of the World Fantasy Awards. Rima has a long-held fascination with the idea of the liminal, that which lies at the edge of culture and society, as well as the literal boundaries between one place and another, both metaphorical and real, and with the power of art that comes from that liminal place. I personally have Rima's The Old Song and Maiden Mother Crone paintings hanging above my desk, and they really do offer me daily inspiration. I can just look to them and they bring me that sense of wonder and awe that I know I talked about on a previous episode quite a bit with a guest, but that idea of like when inspiration is waning thin, what brings us back to awe and then, stokes the fires of inspiration once again. And Rima's paintings are one of the things that does that for me. So this is a huge honor to have this conversation with Rima. In this episode, we discuss Rima's creative process and where she draws creative inspiration from. We discuss art as alchemy, the weaving of many art mediums, and Rima's experience with not only fine art and painting, but also bookbinding, publishing, puppetry, and music. We dive deep into mothering and what it has taught and is teaching Rima. We also discuss how Rima balances motherhood and art making, the grief of mothering without a village, and finally, Rima's experience with living with epilepsy and what it has taught her and is teaching her today. I cannot encourage you enough to go look at and purchase Rima's incredible paintings, books, all the magic she has to offer. And if this podcast supports you, please share it with a friend, with a loved one. Please leave a review. It helps so much in new folks finding this podcast and community. So, without further ado, I bring you this beautiful conversation with Rima Staines. All right, welcome everyone. I am so excited to be here with Rima today. I mentioned this to her when we first signed on, but I have one of her paintings called The Old Song hanging above my desk, and it brings so much joy to me to look at it every day when I'm sitting here. And so to be sitting here with you it's just a huge honor. So welcome, Rima. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Waverly. I'm really happy to be here.
Yes, yeah. I'm so excited for our conversation. So I want to start today by first reading you a little sentence I found on your website, which I love so much and I think really speaks to your essence and your work. You say, "I grew up believing in and half dwelling in a folktale world of my imagination or memory and have continued to do so. My work is the act of making doorways, propping open loops of bramble in the hedge between the worlds for others to see what lies there beyond before I go through myself." Those words, I love that so much. And so I'm wondering if you can speak some to your upbringing and specifically to any pivotal things that brought you to becoming an artist. Were you always an artist, or was there a moment where you were like, I'm an artist now? Like, what was that? What was that journey like for you?
Oh, well, I suspect I always have been an artist, but obviously as a little one didn't think about things in that way. I grew up in London in a family of artists. Both my parents are sculptors. So I had a somewhat unusual upbringing compared to my contemporaries, peers, of my age, other kids in my class, because my parents were artists. And so, art making was always, part of my fabric. For a few years when I was very young, my parents travelled in a converted van over to Europe, and I have really fond and strong memories of those times. And we travelled to a town in southern Bavaria, really close to the Alps, which is sort of, typically a postcard of alpine village life with snow-capped mountains and cowbells. And actually in this place, they have a really old tradition of wood carving, which is what my dad wanted to learn. So he worked in the workshop there. And in the town, there are houses painted with fairy tale scenes on the outsides of the houses, which is, it was, idyllic in my memory, but obviously my parents remember all the breakdowns and the struggle and the poverty. And we were very, very poor, actually. The nuns used to leave food and clothes parcels on our doorstep. I guess that that time or that sensibility really sort of seeped into my inner world. Yeah, both my parents met at art school, and they made art around us while we were growing up. Yeah, so I didn't have that experience of my parents kind of going out to work away, and I grew up believing that art making was an important and valid life choice, which I guess is unusual because other artists that I know often have had to struggle against that sort of expectation that you would do something, something that earns money and something that's accepted by wider society as a sort of so-called proper job, and that they've had to sort of push against that if they really, really believe in their artistic path. But I didn't have that struggle because my parents, really, really supported my artistic self and my skill and imagination and desire to do it, which, I know I'm really lucky to have had that. And as for sort of moment, I don't know. I think, when you're kind of nearing the end of school and you're making choices about subjects that you're going to choose and so on, it makes you think about what you're going to go on and do. And art was always there. Languages were the other thing I loved. And actually, as my life has gone on, many other threads are part of my artistic life. So it's not like it's just one thing. But I guess, I sort of just knew that it was going to be there in my life, and that what I needed to do was figure out how to make a living doing it. It was sort of back to front, it was just, I knew at some point, I can't exactly say what age I was, quite young, I think, that artisthood was in my blood, that it wasn't a thing that was separate from me. So it wasn't a choice that I could or couldn't make, I couldn't get away from it. It was just part of me. And so the sort of more cerebral choice came around this thing of how you make a living and, what subjects to do at school and, and that kind of thing, and how that fits into the shape of my life. But as far as, being an artist in that kind of whole life sense, that's been there for a really, really long time.
What a gift it is to have parents that nurture art in that way. Firstly, that's really beautiful. And like you said, I feel like not such a common experience for many. So did you, as you came into adulthood, did you go straight on to being a working artist, or did you go to art school, or how did you navigate how to step out into the world as an artist, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean, I struggled with that to begin with because my way is, I'm kind of an introvert. I have a tendency to sort of do things in my own little quirky way in the corner that is like, a bit more hermit-like, and I'm not I haven't ever fitted in, even in artistic circles. I don't. And so when it came to sort of thinking about art school, I thought about choosing fine art as a degree subject, and a lot of the courses seem to be teaching really heavy on the conceptual side of things, and I really, really wanted to learn stuff. I wanted to learn skills, and it appeared to me that there weren't so many art courses that really just got you to sort of knuckle down and learn stuff, because the conceptual side of it wasn't a problem for me. I have ideas sort of clamoring at my mind all the time. I wanted to really get stuck into the tools and the paint and so on. So at first I went to university for a year and studied languages in London, and because it was my other love, and I thought, well, I can be an artist. I don't need to necessarily do a degree in that thing. Maybe this is the way of, you know, figuring out how to make a living. But after a year, I realized I couldn't do it, that, you know, I missed it too much. I sort of missed it like, you know, like a longing. And so I found this quirky little degree in book arts and crafts, which had not many people on it and was very kind of craft heavy. It was a lot of illustration and printmaking and bookbinding. And yeah, I went and sort of squirreled myself away on that degree course for 3 years and popped out the other side, having enjoyed myself immensely and gained a first-class degree in something extremely obscure, and then realizing that I still didn't know how to be an artist, you know, in terms of actually making a living. They sort of missed that bit out. So I studied that at the London College of Printing, by the way, which was, nowadays it's part of the whole University of Arts in London. I enjoyed it, but it, you know, it's being an artist is a whole other thing.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I want to learn more about your creative process, and specifically creative inspiration, and where you draw inspiration from, or you know, what that journey of creative inspiration looks like for you, and also how you navigate creative blocks if you have ever faced them before.
Yes. Well, like I just said, the ideas don't tend to leave me. You know, those are the things that I always describe like they're like beings in a way, and they're sort of queuing up around me. I once painted a self-portrait a few years ago where it was called Self-Portrait in a Garment of My Own Imagination, and the clothing that I was wearing was filled with drawings of these beings that are kind of around me and with me all the time. And I guess my experience of having ideas, or the sort of inspiration in a tangible form, is there like a thick atmosphere around me all the time. And it's more about engineering my life so that I can sit down and actually let them come through. There are things that I do that help that process, and I definitely use music a lot. So I suppose I use music a little bit like a mind-altering drug. Yeah, I have a kind of deep relationship with music and with how it causes changes to happen in me. I'm a musician as well. I play the accordion, and I'm really into lots of East European, Balkan, that kind of music, folk music, so of various different places in the world, but kind of focused on that part of the world. I'm not quite sure why it really, really calls to me.
Is that the type of music that you play or listen to when you're kind of going into that creative phase?
Yeah, a lot, yes. I mean, not solely. It's not sort of limited to that, but I would say that the quality of the music has to be, it has to be really soul stirring, and get you in the belly. Have that real that thing that happens to you when something rises up when you hear it. And that will be different for everyone, but something happens to me in certain types of music, pieces of music, that makes that thing happen. And I feel like that's a key part of the process of dropping into the world that I need to be in to allow these scenes and figures to come through. I did a painting once called The Alchemist, which is my attempt to describe this process or this relationship between art and music that I experience. I had a moment on a train once where I was listening to music on my headphones and drawing in my sketchbook at the same time, and this piece of music came on that was, profoundly moved me in that way that I was just describing. And it just struck me, because I was drawing at the same time, that there was something in the in the piece of music, which was obviously created by artists, by the musicians themselves, that they'd made this piece of art, which was transforming me in turn, and it was affecting the piece of art that I was now making. And so in the painting that I then created was about this alchemy, about this actual quality that art has, all kinds of art has this ability to actually change things. And I really believe this, like it actually has a tangible ability to turn one thing into another, you know, and this is the alchemy that wise people have spoken of for a long time, you know, that changing lead into gold, as it were, you know, is possible. And the art has a really, really important role in this. And so in the painting, there is a young woman in the center, and she's dressed in a multicolored striped dress, and she's holding her heart like this in between her hands, and above her, around her kind of halo, above the nimbus around her head, there are many small musicians all playing different instruments, and out of the instruments come ribbons of sound, of music, and they all go into her dress, so they become the kind of colours of her dress. And then around her feet on the floor are many pots of paint, of pigment, all the different colours. So the ribbons of colour are going all the way through her dress, flowing through her heart like blood, and then coming out the end, the hems of the dress, into the pots of paint. And so then that stuff that comes out of the musicians, that comes out of the fiddle and the accordion and the voice of the singer, goes into her heart and is changed and becomes then the actual pigment with which she will then create another piece of art that will then go on and do the same thing to somebody else. So it was about this process of alchemy. She's called alchemichka, which is a Russian word I've written underneath in Cyrillic letters, which actually doesn't exist in Russian. Alchemist is a masculine word, so it would be alchemique. So I've added an A on the end to make it. She's a female alchemist, and yeah, the painting describes this process for me, and I think that it also describes my process, you know, in creating pieces of artwork. And I think, yeah, it's music definitely is really a kind of key part of that. And yeah, as far as artistic blocks go, that's another interesting question, because I don't think I experience them in the same way as a lot of artists where they're just stuck for ideas, you know, and something's not flowing. I don't have that experience. I have many life stuffs, you know, the kind of tumble and overwhelm of real life that gets in the way of being able to create art. That definitely happens all the time. But also the one thing that will stop up my flow is heartbreak. It's not about my ideas so much as my heart, which tells me that my heart is where the work is coming from. It's coming out of my heart, and so yeah. In the past year, I've suffered a big heartbreak, and I've noticed that has really stopped the flow. You know, it just doesn't work. It's kind of horrendous to me, because it's something that's always there. It's like this companion through my life, that my artistic process and my relationship to these other worlds is something that's very, very much mine, and you know, and it's a place that I can go to. And yeah, I suppose that is the big thing, that, you know, that heartbreak, whether it's, you know, in a big way like that, or even little small heart bruises that happen, you know, throughout your days, can really affect how it's going. And then sometimes, you know, there are pieces of work that just have to be finished, that are, you know, commissions or design work that needs doing. You know, there's all sorts of, you know, I'm not just sitting sort of in the flow creating pieces of work all the time. There's loads of other parts of life as an artist that involve, you know, spending hours, you know, erasing pixels or like replying to emails and, you know, those kinds of things that are part of the life of an artist these days, where you have to be a promoter and well, you know how it is. You have to be everything. It's ridiculous, really, when actually all I want to do is squirrel away in here and paint.
Absolutely. I love this thread of visualizing this painting, The Alchemist, and how the heart is so central to that painting and to your experience as an artist. And I just loved listening to you describe the painting, and I have such a vivid image of it in my mind. And so I'm so excited to go look it up and look at like how I envisioned it versus how you created it, and just kind of see those side by side. I'm really excited to do that. And yeah, the heart, I mean, so much of art comes directly from our heart, right? From our center. And it's that same, like you said, how the music brings you down into the belly. It brings you into the center where the creation is coming from. Absolutely. Yeah, it's such a strong visual for me to imagine that. So I want to ask you about, so not only are you a painter and a fine artist, you also are a publisher, and then you also have theater, right? Under the same. Yeah. So I want to learn more about the journey of weaving together those mediums, publishing and theater, and what brought you to bring that into your artistry as well. And because, you know, I think that's somewhat unique. A lot of artists, it seems, kind of have a medium that they stay with for a while. And it seems like you're weaving together all these beautiful, magical mediums. So I'm curious to hear more about that.
I guess I hadn't ever given it too much thought, the fact that I have so many sort of strands to my bow, or that it was unusual. I just have a desire to create worlds, I suppose, and ultimately to create stories, or to tell stories, and that stories are really, really fundamental to my work. And, you know, I believe that they are really necessary things for humans. You know, we've always needed stories, and we still do. You know, it makes things make sense to have a story told about what's happening, or what will happen, or what did happen. And so I have this fascination with, you know, myth and folktale, and, you know, I want to tell those stories in all the ways I can. And there's something, again, really powerful for me where when you combine image and music, or text and image, you know, so you're combining different art forms together to create a world, it makes a more complete three-dimensional experience, I think. And I think that's where it comes from. Not that I've ever really given it sort of analytical thought like that, but I think that's what it's about. And I've always just had a real fascination and love for puppetry and live music, and these kind of magical liminal places, you know, fireside storytellings, and, you know, that world that is conjured by artists so beautifully, and that is the sort of lifeblood that we need, you know, that we crave, actually, you know, that so many people I talk to have this kind of visceral response to the kind of art forms that have that kind of magic, that real zing to them. It's not all, you know, nicely presented work. It's got a kind of crackle to it, and that's what I'm interested in. I've made animations in the past. As I said, I studied book art, so I'm interested in, I love books, and, you know, this combination between story and image, whether that's in a book form or on stage, where you get to tell the story in so many different ways. But, you know, I'm still making my way through that journey as well, you know, and you know, in a way, my life is an art form, you know, in in the sense of, or an artwork rather, you know, I'm still kind of putting it together and creating it and figuring out what to do next or how to do it. You know, I don't really have a map. I guess most people feel like that.
Definitely, definitely. And you've illustrated a lot of other folks' writing as well, right?
Yeah.
Other authors. And so can I ask you about what that process is like when the story is, you know, flowing from another heart, so to speak? How do you sit down to like capture that in painting, illustration? Like, you know, when it's not the story that's maybe come from directly from your heart, is that a different process or do they not feel very different?
It's an interesting question. I think I have to find my way into that person's world. And so I will only take on the work if I feel I can do that. You know, if it feels kin to me and it feels like I can actually go there. You know, when I've done work for music covers or illustrated stories, it feels really important that it's that connected in a way that that feels really true. And it's an interesting process, that sort of linking up imaginal worlds, you know, because they're never the same. I think that we all have our own well of inspiration, you know, this deep place that we go to, that where your own inspiration comes from, and you can't take from another person's well. You know, that's why it feels so wrong when artists, you know, try and imitate or copy in a way that is actually, you know, it's taking something that isn't theirs, and it shows in the work. The work feels empty, and that's very different, obviously, from being inspired by another's artwork, and learning. And you know, even art used to be taught in that way, that you would copy old masters, and you know, that you learn in that way. That's very different from what I'm talking about. You know, this thing of having your own personal well that you go down into, and that it's very much your own, and that if you're illustrating someone else's work, you kind of have to get familiar with where they go, and that there's some kind of link up. I know the process that I had with Sylvia Lindstedt, who I know you've spoken to on this podcast, was actually the other way round, where she wrote pieces of writing based on my illustration. So in a way, the illustration came first, and then she kind of went into the worlds that I'd created in the images. So this is with the book Tatterdemalion. So yeah, it was a back to front process, which is quite unusual, I think. And so the places that I'd conjured and the feelings that I'd conjured very much influenced the world that she created in the story. And it began as separate vignettes, which were then stitched together and became a whole kind of epic book, which I really recommend everyone read. It's really, really unusual, and that really worked. The beginning, when it was just growing, I really encouraged Sylvia to write more, because I hadn't come across her work before then, and I was completely blown away by it. So yeah, I felt really lucky that she wanted to enter into these worlds, and the experience of then reading the story afterwards was really strange, because it was like, you know, when you go into a room that you know really well, but someone has moved the furniture around, and it's like, oh, there's something different in here, you know. It feels like that, but it instead of it being a room in the outside world, it's like she'd gone into my dreams and moved the furniture around. So it was really familiar, and kind of a world that people don't generally go into. A kind of strange and intimate experience, and it's definitely not the last time that we will collaborate.
I love that book so much. I absolutely encourage folks to read it and look at the illustrations. I didn't realize that the process had shaped that way. Sounds so magical. And the way you describe it as you're each stepping into each other's like liminal worlds. I mean, could there be anything more magical?
Yeah.
That's so amazing. Oh, wow. Super cool. So I want to close with asking you about motherhood. A lot of folks that listen to this are mamas, parents, caregivers of some sort. And I'm just curious, how do you weave it all together? How do you weave together art making, publishing, theater, motherhood? How do you have the time and energy? Like, for other artist mamas out there, you know, how do you do it? And what would you recommend or advice you would give?
Yeah, it's the ultimate dance, isn't it? It's really, really hard. My children are 7 and 3 now. I have 2 sons, and they are my whole world. And obviously, it's been an interesting journey, because the thing about motherhood is that it's a deeply creative process, and you're literally creating human life in your body. There's nothing more creative than that. And then once they're born, that's sort of, it's not finished, it's just the beginning. And they take so much shaping, don't they? And you're showing them how to be a person, and that's such a big work, and you don't realize before you have children. It's nobody can kind of tell you, and then you're like, oh my god, it's just, it's so big, and it's the most wonderful and most, the biggest love that I've ever felt, and the most challenging task of all of them. And as an artist, it's sort of doubly hard, because you're working freelance. You don't get maternity pay or anything like that, so you just stop working when you're looking after your children, and the money stops coming. So you have to kind of, although it's flexible, you don't have any kind of backup. So there's this big juggle. I'm still figuring it out. It's been really, really huge. When my eldest son was born, we were building a travelling storytelling theatre to live in, which we moved into when he was just a baby, before he turned 1, I think, or no, just after. And so we were living on the road in a vintage truck come storytelling theatre, travelling around doing that, which sounds incredibly romantic, but is actually extremely hard. And out of that grew the publishing house, the press, Hedge Spoken. So the truck, the travelling storytelling theatre, is called Hedge Spoken, which comes from this, the idea of the words spoken from the hedge, both the literal hedge and the metaphorical space, in between space, that the hedge represents. So Hedge Spoken Theatre is the theatre side of it, and Hedge Spoken Press is the publishing side of it. And that's through Hedge Spoken Press. Now that's where you can buy all my prints and books, which are sent off all around the world, just from a very small sort of grassroots creation that has, it has become the sort of sole income, but it's so hard to kind of figure out how to, amongst that, you're mothering children, you're also sort of trying to run a business and figure out how to, what kind of promotion you need to do to get people to know about the things you do, so they buy them, so that you can make more, so that blah, blah, blah. Actually running a business is really, really hard. And as an artist, it doesn't really come naturally, although I'm determined and have all of these strings to my bow. It's hard to, it's hard to kind of make it keep going. And I'm inclined to sort of call on other people with other skills, and hopefully that will happen more, both in the creation of the art, and in time creating more theatre shows with puppets and music and so on, and more books. But then somewhere in amongst all that, I have to find time to paint, which is the thing really that I love. I'm sitting in my studio now. That's what I do here. I'd love to have more time to do that. But having children is it's the most a transformational process. I think, for women, we have this kind of one remaining initiatory experience that we can't get around. If we choose to have children, there are many initiatory experiences that you can choose to sort of experience yourself. But motherhood is one where the choice element is not entirely your own. It's like the universe comes inside of you and cracks you in half, literally. That it literally you're cloven in half, and and this being grows inside you and is born, and on the other side of that, you're not the same person, and you can't go back. And then the coming to terms with that, who you are and now, and how you do this thing. You've got this precious holy thing in your hands, and you're like, oh my God, it's utterly profound. And I don't know that people talk about this enough. I mean, maybe they do, and that we just don't listen until it's relevant, or maybe it's not spoken about. I don't know. I mean, I found it really, really, really big. And I also struggled a lot with the grief of not doing it in a village, and I only really realized this sort of tangibly once I was holding a baby in my arms, and I realized, I actually had that feeling at that time, and I still do now, where I'm looking over my shoulder for the grandmothers and the aunts and wanting them and needing them, and they're not there. They're not there in a wider sense. I have a supportive family, but they don't live nearby, and that's partly because of the journey that I took and where I ended up in the country. I live in Devon in southwest England, so in a rural, beautiful spot right near Dartmoor, which is a beautiful place, inspiring and wild. And there are many artists and interesting creative people in this area. So, I'm supported in that way by friendship and community. But we don't have the kind of interweaving of tribe, for want of a better word, that we remember in our bones, or in our, that we have blood memory of. And, we're all sort of sectioned off into these little separate units, with walls in between us, and we've all got our own washing machines and so on. And, it's kind of ridiculous because it's so hard. And I remember that, when you have a small baby, you're desperate for companionship. You really, really want other people. And I remember I used to sit a lot in cafes just to be around other people whilst feeding my baby. Yeah, I've gone off on a tangent there, but yes, that grief of not having that was big. And all of that gets kind of woven into your life as an artist. And I think the life of an artist is sort of uniquely, it is your life. It isn't separate from it. So you don't go to work and then close off at the end of the day and come back to your real life or your home life. It's all your life is an artwork in a way. Your artwork is your life. It's all, certainly for me anyway, it's interwoven, and it's not separated out. And I hope that that, in the same way my parents gave that to me, that I will be able to give that to my children, and that they'll grow up surrounded by art making and stories and music, and imbibe that on a blood level.
Beautiful. As I'm listening to you speak of motherhood and this grief for the community, the grief for the village, that is what the Painting the Old song said to me. I don't know if that was your intention with painting it, and if folks haven't seen it, it's a bunch of women all in a circle with drums, holding each other. And when I saw it, I was like, oh, there's the village. She literally painted that. And I recently heard on a different podcast and I mentioned it in a past episode, it's just stayed with me so strongly, for much of human history, women collectively in communities, tribes, clans would breastfeed each other's babies. And when I heard that, I just started sobbing, because I was like, that, that's what it is. That's what we're missing. That exact thing of like in the painting, the women all being together, breastfeeding the babies, the aunties, the grandmothers, like that community support is that, like, I have 7-year-old twins, and I have my mother here. I have my mother-in-law here. I have great friendships here, and I have that grief so deeply still, so I just want you and anyone listening who has that grief too, to know that they're not alone, that it's like, it's so visceral and so real. And I just love that, like, we're sitting here talking about this, and like, that's what that painting that you created means to me,
That's
it's like a whole circle.
And also it just struck me what you were saying about breastfeeding each other's babies, that's, you're sort of literally weaving the strong webs there by giving breast milk to another child, so that they're, imbibing the, immunity and all sorts of goodness in the actual milk of another mother, that there's that sort of mutual support that sort of represents a really sort of robust, strong web in the community, which we're lacking. It's a really interesting question. When I had my second son nearly 4 years ago, not long after he was born, I developed epilepsy. So I have had a really, really, really tough time these past years. I was having multiple seizures in the night times. Really, struggled a lot. I mean, it's the most terrifying thing I've ever experienced. They think it was triggered by the hormones of pregnancy. Why that happens sometimes, randomly for some people, we don't really know, why it would happen in that pregnancy and not any of the other pregnancies I've had, and I, really, I just thought of it because when I first woke up in an ambulance, I didn't know where I was or what had happened, and I didn't know where my baby was. He was not there in my arms, and there's sort of really visceral panic, and his dad had to figure out how on earth to feed him in the middle of the night. He was only 3 months old, and so he called a friend who also had a baby, and asked for some of her breast milk, which she had in the freezer, and that until he managed to go and get some formula, that's what happened, which was lovely. But that experience has really, changed my experience of motherhood in the last few years, because I've been so traumatized by it, and I've been the experience of the seizures means that I'm taken away, like I don't remember what's happened, and it takes me a long time to come back, and then my body is racked, and my memory is still really affected, and it's under control with drugs now, but the whole trajectory of the story has not been how I thought things would go at all, and to be sort of woven into motherhood, and to be dealing with trauma in that sort of really extreme way, and that, being faced so close to death again and again and again and again whilst you're raising babies, is it's massive. It's really massive. So I still have a lot of processing to do, and I will paint it, no doubt. I have already tried to draw it and understand it through making drawings, but there's a lot more of that to do, because it hasn't gone away. That's very much in my life now, and I'm kind of fascinated by the whole experience of being so close to the other world as an artist, having this kind of tipping over into other realms thing happen, and then for it to happen in such a sort of violent way without my consent, if you like, has been a whole journey of exploration and trying to learn and understand what epilepsy is and how it's viewed from different cultures and times, you know, how humans have understood this strange thing that has in the past been called the sacred disease, or, you know, it's had many different names and many different ways of understanding what's happening there. But I'm interested in, particularly in this, you know, like I say, this kind of proximity to the other world that I've had all my life, you know, that now it has sort of arrived in this form. So yeah, I've got a lot more exploring to do.
I'm sure those paintings and drawings are just absolutely incredible. I can't even imagine, like, the power, the trauma, the power, the intensity of that experience channeled into a form of creation must just be.
They may not be very
incredible.
pleasant.
Hey, that is what art is. Yeah. Art is the truth, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I feel like I could talk to you for hours, Rima. There's so much more I want to ask you, but I also want to be mindful of your time. So in closing, firstly, is there anything that feels left unsaid? I know we talked about so much, so many huge things, but firstly, is there anything left unsaid? I want to give you space for that. And also then we'll just close with where folks can find all of your magical work.
I don't know. There's probably lots that's been unsaid. I'm about to release a book of illustrated nursery rhymes, which folks can find at Hedge Spoken Press. It's just in the last stages of finalising the paper and the, you know, print layout and so on. And so that will be appearing soon. It's a small collection of my favourite nursery rhymes, the sort of stranger ones, which I've illustrated with drawings. There's all sorts of things that I'm doing, exciting projects, collaborations, things that are on the easel at the moment. But, you know, yeah, as we've just touched on, you know, the juggle of motherhood and everything is big. So it's probably all the important stuff has fallen out of my brain now, but it's been so lovely to talk to you.
Yes, and no worry. We'll link your website and Instagram and all of that too in the show notes so folks can look at your beautiful art. I know I already said this, but please go look at Rima's art, like, and buy her books. It's so, it speaks, you know, it truly speaks. And I know that is so many people's experience, not only my own. So it has been an absolute honor. I'm just so grateful for you sharing your true, authentic self with me and all the folks listening. And I can't wait to see all the new books and art that is to come. So thank you for being here, Rima.
Oh, thank you for having me, Waverly.
Thank you so much for listening to this beautiful conversation between Rima and I. Again, I cannot encourage you enough to check out Rima's incredible, stunning artwork. If this conversation nourished you in any way, please consider sharing it with a friend. You can text it to a friend. You can share it on your Instagram stories. Really, that is what keeps this podcast going. Folks sharing it, folks spreading the word. It's how this podcast grows, and it truly means everything to me. So please share away. And if you want to extra support us, you can leave a review on Apple Podcasts, leave a rating on Spotify, or donate financially. Any and all are always so welcomed and appreciated. Yeah, I can't believe we're at like over 30 episodes. It's the wildest thing. It's so amazing. This podcast came in like a force and has just grown and grown, and it's been so beautiful to be on this journey. So thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing it with people you love. And I will see you soon in the next episode. Until then, my loves.